As we continue today's event and hearing from our supporters, allies, and friends, and dealing with this terrible issue of Islamophobia in Canada and being a leader in Canada for the rest of the world, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce our next speaker, MLA Sonia Furstenau, who is the leader of the BC Green Party. Sonia is a great friend with a kind heart, and I think that's what will make the biggest difference in addressing this and other forms of hatred, is kind-hearted people coming together to make real change. She was first elected to the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia in the 2017 provincial election to represent the electoral district of Cowichan Valley. And she actually started her career in 2014, her political career, when she was elected to serve as a director of the electoral area B within the Cowichan Valley Regional District. And this was after 2 years of working with the Shawagan Residents Association to protest and appeal permits that were allowing landfills to be built on the banks of the community's drinking source. So right down to the core issues facing her community, health and well-being, Sonia has been at the forefront of trying to deal and address those. She also has a BA and MA in history from the University of Victoria, giving her the perspective of how we got to where we are so that we can build a better future. Thank you so much, Sonia. It's an honor to have you with us today, and we look forward to hearing your voice.
Thank you so much, Yusuf, and thank you to the Foundation for a Path Forward and to your efforts and Tariq's tireless efforts to not just coordinate events like this, but relentlessly work to create community and connection rooted in anti-racism. I am incredibly grateful to all who have spoken so far. It's heartening to see such a turnout to this important event, and at the same time, my heart is heavy. As Minister Heyman indicated, the horror of what happened, what we are commemorating today, but also what continues to happen. And indeed, what is happening right now is sickening. I'm speaking from the unceded territories of Cowichan tribes and Malahat Nation. It is an immense privilege to live and learn on this land and from the people who have been here for millennia. As Yusuf said at the outset, we are gathered in solidarity and allyship with the Muslim community to recognize the victims of Islamophobia and hatred. It is so critical that we pause on this day to remember the people whose lives have been lost and the families and the communities that bear that loss in perpetuity. I appreciate Minister Sajan's words. We must ensure that there is no social license for hate or Islamophobia in our country. These days, it feels like we are spending a lot of time in crisis. COVID-19, climate change, mental illness, drug poisoning, and racism. It feels heavy and all-encompassing and sometimes inescapable. And it's particularly painful to see the overlap, the structural, institutional ways that these experiences are compounded. Think of how COVID-19 has hit communities of color far more heavily. And think of how racist incidents have spiked as the virus has spread. I think about all of this as I reflect on this day of remembrance and action. The white supremacist who murdered 6 Muslim worshippers at the Islamic Cultural Center on January 29th was not the end of the violence and hatred that Muslim people are facing. I think of the Afzal family murdered last summer while going on an evening walk. I think of Fatima Anvari doing the meaningful work of teaching students through a pandemic and then ordered to remove her hijab. I think of those, again, murdered at the Islamic Cultural Center in Quebec and those murdered in Christchurch. In the aftermath of these terrible tragedies, the common thread is that communities have come together in support, love, and healing. Fundraisers for the families, memorial events, laws are passed banning assault weapons, and people, regardless of color or creed, come together to mourn. But I think it's important to recognize how much more we have to do and the weight of responsibility that the community leaders present today must bear. There are governments in Canada passing discriminatory legislation banning the wearing of religious symbols such as a hijab, effectively institutionalizing Islamophobia. And this is wrong. It is discriminatory and dangerous, And it goes to show how much work we have to do to recommit to anti-racism and to commit to supporting, uplifting, and protecting the Muslim community. Just as communities have come together in the aftermath of tragedy and crisis, I hope we can come together today and tomorrow and to continue to come together to take proactive action. I hope we can see what has come to pass and the rising rates of violence and acknowledge that we must double down on leading with love. That means calling out racism when we see it, whether it's at a grocery store or in the legislature. It means reaching out as the foundation for a path forward and Anti-Racism Network have done to build relationships across communities so that we can work together to improve lives for everybody. All of this to say, even amidst the grief that we carry today, I am hopeful. I am inspired by all of you at this event, by the speakers, by the people on social media who have posted their support and offered care and love to those closest to the pain. I'm inspired by young people all around using their platforms for good, focused on a future where we can all live in equity and safety. I've thought a great deal about that hopeful vision for the future. And one of the greatest hurdles we face is our unwillingness to be truthful about the present. We must acknowledge and confront the racism problem we have in Canada. We are confronted by it in acts of violence and murder, but we must also recognize that it is the racism that is built into our laws, the racism that permeates our systems and institutions that is relentlessly damaging to people and to the future that we all must commit to building together. It's heartening to see all of the leaders here today as we share this essential commitment to ending Islamophobia, hatred, and racism in our communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonia. We truly appreciate you being here and sharing those words with us. Every time we meet, I always feel heartened to know that allies such as yourself not only exist, but are also working diligently to have an outcome that is positive for all communities towards these issues. Thank you for sharing your voice with us today, Sonia. We really appreciate it.